Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's presidency and the opinions of the American public as to how they view the incumbent president as well as his administration at large. Yesterday, I made a video discussing Donald Trump's second administration, what it looks like with the first 26 executive orders, a record high for any president in U.S. history, and looking at the way that the American public has sort of changed their view of Donald Trump over time really comes into relevance when looking back on the 2024 election and looking ahead to elections in 2025, 2026, and yes, even 2028. And a big reason why I think this is worth our time talking about a favorability rating when we spent very little time talking about it in even the 2024 election, but also when Donald Trump was president the first time. Because there wasn't much changing about Donald Trump's opinion, the American public opinion on Donald Trump for a very long time. And really, that was damaging for Donald Trump. But in the 2024 election season and right after Trump was elected, there were massive changes in public opinion around the former president, or incumbent president now, but at the time, former president, right? We were looking at the president-elect and how him and his team going into that election, going in the immediate aftermath of it, never let up. They are still a constant presence online, on social media, in advertisements, in media dominance. And it isn't to say that Donald Trump didn't do that in 2016 or 2017, but clearly something about the strategy around Donald Trump's brand identity is really helping him in this, overall sense of perception from the American public. Now, I know that was a lot to really just throw on you to talk about, Donald Trump having a massive change here, but it really is something that has changed in the past 2 months that has put Donald Trump in a unique position that he honestly has never been in, except for maybe a week during his presidency in 2017, and even then, it never came down to favorability. I'm going to take a moment to discuss the difference between favorability and then also approval. There are no substantive polls here besides one from Insider Advantage as to Donald Trump's approval rating. So in terms of how people view the administration, very different than how they view Donald Trump as a person. However, it is almost always standard that the way that people view Donald Trump as a person is often more negative than how they view his administration. Bear with me. But looking all the way back in 2021 when he left office, Donald Trump had an unfavorability rating of 18 points higher than favorable, meaning less than roughly 2 out of 5 Americans said they had a favorable view of Trump. Roughly 3 out of 5 Americans said they had an unfavorable view of Trump. Today, that number has really skyrocketed upwards for Donald Trump over the 4 years, up to 47.3% of the American public saying today, or 46.4% rather, saying that they have a favorable view of him, and just 48% saying unfavorable. This is the first time ever in Donald Trump's existence as a candidate, as a businessman, where there have been national polls surrounding his name that show him with an unfavorability rating less than 50%. So Donald Trump really does have a lot going for him that he didn't have going for him before in terms of, public favor. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won the national popular vote, and that was the big talking point for Democrats. No, the majority of the country did not want Donald Trump. In fact, more voters voted for Hillary Clinton than they did Donald Trump. Now, this time around, Kamala Harris lost the popular vote. Donald Trump won the popular vote. And so the talking points were flipped, but also it spoke to a general trend line here that we had seen. Right before the election, Donald Trump really narrowed that sense of favorability from being in the negative, right? Moving it closer and closer. And then they didn't let up. Full gas on the pedal, right? Continue to change the way the public viewed Trump. And then by the time we're reaching today, Donald Trump's administration, 2 days into it, 2 full days into it, marked actually 14 minutes ago. It's 12:14 right now. I don't know when this is going to go up, probably sometime around 2 or 3. But still, right, 2 full days into it, and Donald Trump is at a better position than he has ever been. And what that means is that when we're looking at the favorability polls, the first time around, Donald Trump didn't have it easy. We can see that the average of Trump, especially towards the end, was very negative after January 6th. But looking at that beginning, Donald Trump at most, on the first day in office, which was his highest point, had a 45.5% approval, 41.3% disapproved, and arguably for a while. This was because people thought to themselves, I don't like Trump, but what can I disapprove of right now? But still, because Donald Trump was so unpopular on the favorability standpoint, because people didn't like him as a candidate, they didn't like him as a person, the approval rating was tanked because of it. He was never able to overcome that margin at which he was at, which was 45.5% to 41.3%. A week later, the honeymoon's over, and he's in the negative for the rest of his presidency. And there are very low points for Donald Trump. You can see at some point in time 20-point deltas between disapprove and approve. And as he got closer to elections, he had this miraculous ability to change the way people perceived him. Right before the midterms went from being -20 to -10. And then right before the 2020 election, went from a point where over the summer he was down 16. And then right before the election, he ended up narrowing to a point where it was close enough, where it was an 8-point delta. Donald Trump does this very well. He did this in 2024, which won him the presidency, might I add. But he never was in the positives after that first week of his presidency the first time. And at most, he was at 45.5%. So now looking at this one, the second Trump term, the only poll here, Insider Advantage, granted, is not necessarily the best. I think that we're in a position where we can say reasonably we need to wait for more data. But besides that, take a look at what it's telling us. Because even in that first term, again, going back, I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about that first term, but it really does matter. When you're taking a look at that really early on stage, actually, so I don't think it's going to go ahead and show this to me unless I'm actually scrolling towards the end. I guess it's not going to scroll towards the end. Maybe if we're changing the dates, probably not. Either way, if you are to go back and take a look, hey, wait a second. What did the high levels show for Trump in that first time? Never was he at plus 17. And never did he have any point in time during his presidency where the favorability was at this point, where it was just 1.6% of a difference here. So what does this mean for future elections? What does this mean for the immediate? Well, one, there won't be as much sympathy for Democrats who are suing the Trump admin on decisions like this. A big reason? Nearly the majority of the nation voted for decisions like this. I think we forget that, in 2016, the Democratic talking point was Hillary Clinton won the national popular vote. We were within 40,000 votes, 80,000 votes across the swing states, or 40,000 votes across the swing states, rather. And ultimately, right, Donald Trump was elected president out of a fluke because Hillary Clinton didn't visit Wisconsin, because she visited Michigan a few times, because they didn't focus and they spent too much time in Iowa, 10 visits in Iowa, 0 in Wisconsin, right? They visited Florida 30 times, lost the state. They visited Ohio 8, 12 times, lost the state, right? Those were the talking points. Democrats said, okay, we mismatched our strategy. Clearly, the blue wall is the blue wall, but Hillary Clinton lost it because Trump had a unique appeal that Biden can win back, or Bernie can win back, or someone can win back in 2020. And then they did. They got it back. And then this time around, there was a concerted effort across 7 battleground states. If we remember back in 2020, we remember that Biden was making a 13-state play for the presidency. It involved a number of states that were on the radar for the first time ever. Texas was considered a battleground by some members of the Biden campaign, and nationally speaking, was polling well within the margin of error that on Election Day, Trump led by no more than just a few percentage points in the state in terms of opinion polls. This time around, Donald Trump wins Texas by 14 points, completely reversing any type of Democratic movement in one night. But this isn't about Texas. This is about a massive reversion away from the Democratic Party that existed in so many different states. New Jersey is a perfect example. A state that has been solidly blue came down to a 5-point margin this cycle. So when we talk about these things that are now being put up in the New York Times, Trump is being sued by 22 states. His Department of Justice is refusing to acknowledge this and, in fact, investigating any public officials who don't move forward with Donald Trump's immigration policies. All of these different things that were, in ways, theatrics for the media, but very real policies for the American public that they didn't agree with back 8 years ago. They do agree with today, at least to some degree. I'm not sitting here and arguing with you about, trying to argue to you that birthright citizenship isn't explicit in the Constitution. I am confident that these 22 states will, in fact, successfully sue the Trump admin and block it. The question is, though, is this a talking point that Democrats or Republicans will be able to use in the next year, 2 years, given that there are immediate elections and serious repercussions of decisions like this from the Trump admin, serious impacts on immigrant communities? But do voters have the appetite, one, to consider these things the same way they did 8 years ago, to talk about them constantly, to be in the resist lib space that existed very much in 2017 and 2018, that led into that new wave of Congress people in 18, led into the 2020 election to Democrats to victory. Is there an appetite? 1. 2. On the voters that changed their minds. I'm talking to the Biden to Trump voters. On the voters that changed their minds on issues like the economy, but were willing, because of the economy, to look past things like RFK Jr. as HHS, right? Talking about that. I'm sure there were many people who had genuine concerns about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, about RFK Jr., about so many different things, but the material forms of what was impacting them was the economy. And the economy was in a place where the American public said definitively at the ballot box and in opinion polling that they view the economy as negative. It doesn't matter what Democrats or Republicans say or what even is reality. That's not up for debate. When voters vote, it is all about perception. It's a vibes economy no matter what it is. It could be in a really good place and voters could say it's not. It could be in a really bad place and voters could say it could be, right? That's the entire argument here. However, what voters were willing to accept and be okay with is a big reason why Donald Trump right now is getting these high approvals. A big reason as to why he's favored in a way. And it's nowhere near Biden, right? In the beginning of Biden, that was a much better place, right? 23 points approved. So much better numbers for Biden. When you're looking at Obama, much better numbers for Obama. Obama was at record high 67. Get this. 67% say they approve, 13% say they disapprove of Obama's first week in office. 67-13. That is incomprehensible by today's metric. Even Biden at his high point, it was 53-30, right? And that even seems incomprehensible today because it is. And so Donald Trump at 56-39 is probably the best we will see for any type of Republican or even Democratic president for quite some time because of this situation. And polarization, I meant to say, but looking at the favorability rating, again, these things that made voters see Trump as morally incomprehensible, as someone they could not reason with, they now agree with. When voters have been swayed by 8 years of a Trump campaign, yes, through 2020 and 2024, their opinions on issues change. It isn't just that the American public is taking, the candidates at face value and saying, Trump is better for the economy, but I completely stand against all these other issues. If they were willing to vote for Trump in the first place, they were willing to sign off on many of these stances that Donald Trump is taking. And that's the thing. We have an evolving electorate. Young people are becoming more conservative. It's not that the liberal young people are aging out. In fact, it seems in years past it was the opposite. But now there's a changing of opinion. There are definitively voters that voted for Biden and voters that voted for Clinton that voted for Trump this time around. It was a combination of effects that led to Kamala Harris's loss in this race. One was turnout, because a lot of Democrats were not enthusiastic enough to turn out, especially not in a way that they were in 2020, which was the highest turnout we had seen in over 100 years. But also, those swing voters, those voters in the suburbs of Philadelphia who said, I was not in for Trump during COVID, but I'm in for him today because of X, Y, and Z. And the list really does go on. It is a very vast one. I will not say that at any point in time I think Harris could have just switched, one particular issue and that would have saved her in the election, because that's not how elections work. But when we're talking about a broad strokes thing, about a second Trump admin, looking at his deportation plan, the mass deportations that he's expecting to send, and we're looking at future elections, and we're looking at the way people view even people associated with Trump like J.D. Vance, you see that the numbers are getting better. J.D. Vance at some point in time was in the negatives, double digits nationwide. Now he's brought it down to 4 points. A lot of that has to do with because people associate him with Donald Trump, and they have changed their opinion not only on Trump, but on Trump's policies too. And so it'll be interesting. It will be fascinating to see exactly how this approval rating does fluctuate, because there are very real impacts and realities of these Trump policies. But the question is, when it comes down at least, and I know this is a very, very important time, right? Policy impacts us all. But on the stake of elections, on the topic here, we will be seeing how it does impact candidates in special elections in 25 and 26. Will there be a massive rejection of the Republican Party? Because if Donald Trump can hold this approval through the 2026 midterms, no chance Democrats win the House or the Senate. But it doesn't happen that way. Honeymoon periods only last for a certain period of time, and chances are, knowing Trump as a person and knowing Trump as a candidate, it will probably fade off in the coming months. But this is the first time we've really seen Donald Trump engaged with in a way that is similar to any other past president, and that is a honeymoon period that is expected to be extended, apathy from the American public, and a change in sentiment around the issues that they have campaigned on and have promised to champion, like Obama with Obamacare, was very negative in the initial stages. Once Obama attached his name to it, started to increase, was still ended up being negative, but still voters reelected him. And that's a similar case to Donald Trump. Main difference now, Donald Trump can't run again, at least barring any type of constitutional changes. So these approval ratings will really only be impacting the Republican Party at large and how people perceive those people close to Donald Trump, like J.D. Vance and others in the cabinet, and how they will see future elections and how they will vote, because these policies here and Donald Trump's administration will certainly have an impact on the way the American public perceives politics in the same way it did over the past 4 to 8 years. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post-2025 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.